Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP, Nick is here in attendance with me, as per usual, because today we are going through our NXT Stand and Deliver reactions. So that was the event that took place this past weekend as part of WrestleMania weekend over in Vegas. A whole lot going on for the weekend. But how about we take a step into the first little bit of action across the weekend and break everything down, see what happened, and say what we thought of everything as well. So let's go on to the countdown show first, where we did have one particular match taking place. This would be a fatal four-way number one contenders match for the Women's Tag Team Championships, and this would be under elimination rules. So we would have the teams of Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley, Metaphors, Lash Legend, and Jakara Jackson, Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade, as well as Fatal Influences, JC Jane and Fallon Henley. So the winners of this one would take on the winners of the Women's Tag Team Championship match at WrestleMania. That would be the match between Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, the current champions as of recording, taking on Bayley and Lara Valkyria. So regarding the setup for this particular matchup, we didn't really get too much because it was literally just said on the previous NXT leading up to this Stand and Deliver event. So there wasn't really much to go on from there. But an opportunity for the Women's Tag Team Championships. That's what all these women want. And it would be the team of Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley who would actually get the victory here and secure their spot on NXT after WrestleMania weekend to take on the Women's Tag Team Champions. So quite the surprising shock for myself, really. I didn't see this one coming, very left field for me personally. I thought that when you have the team of Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade sort of like reunite, I guess you could say, that very small interaction on NXT, I thought, okay, well, they're probably the team with the most interest. I probably would go with those. That seems to make most sense for me personally. But it didn't come down to that. Roxanne Perez would actually leave Cora Jade in the match, like halfway through. Cora left by herself, left to defend herself. She wouldn't be able to keep up the numbers. She would get pinned, eliminated. So those two would be eliminated from the match, and that would be that done. It would eventually come down to Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley against Fatal Influence. Meta Girls would be eliminated first from the contest. Tatum and Dolan with some pretty good chemistry together here, taking out Fatal Influence and securing their spot for the Women's Tag Team Championship match. I think, very surprised this one. The match was quite fun. It was a good way to kick things off, set the pace, get people interested, get the crowd going. When you get eight people, regardless whether it's male or female, whatever, there's obviously going to be a lot of spots, and there was a particular part of the match where it was quite a spot fest. But I think just a way to rally up the crowd to get things interesting and to prepare for the start of the actual show that's going to take place moments later. I think this is not a bad way to get things going. I gave this one a 7 out of 10 personally. Just sort of like it did its job. We got new number one contenders. It was a little bit carnage throughout the entirety. There was a little bit of obviously drama with Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade. So yeah, I think mostly not like a stellar world class match, but good enough. Did what it needed to, and set the pace nicely for the crowd. So Nick, what about you though? What did you think of our opening contest? Were you surprised about Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley getting the victory here and being the number one contenders for the Women's Tag Team Championships? Or maybe did you see this one coming?
Well, first of all, based on our predictions, definitely didn't see this one coming. With both of us having, or I had Fatal Influence, and I think you had Cora and Roxy, if I remember correctly. But regardless, it was definitely out of left field, and I think putting them on the pre-show actually shocked me as well. I didn't see that coming, but having watched the whole card now, I feel like it probably was the best move, as I would probably dub it the least impressive match, I would say. Not that that's any, me throwing shade at them or anything. Just it was a pretty stacked card, and obviously a bit on the longer side as well after the couple of matches that were added last week. That being said, honestly, I don't have a ton to add that you haven't already hit, but Gigi and Tatum winning here, I think, are by far the least deserving of the match. I thought Metaphor getting eliminated out early was kind of crazy too. I would argue they're probably the best tag team of the bunch here. Obviously, Cora and Roxy have their history and whatnot. but they haven't worked together in a while, and throwing them back together for this match seemingly. Um, and Fatal Influence, I thought, coming down to those two teams at the end, I thought for sure that they were the ones that were going to get the win here. So, but yeah, nice surprise. And I will say this for Gigi and Tatum. First of all, I think Tatum has loads of potential, and I think she's bigger than a tag team. But I realize there are lots and lots of people on the roster, so have to fit in where you can. That being said, with the with that tag team, I do feel like they are the most interesting, and certainly the crowd loved them. So I think they have potential, and they could do something with this tag team. Um, but yeah, I think it's probably another reason why I was on the pre-show due to the winners. But yeah, I think they have potential, and whomever they end up facing on NXT, I think could potentially be an interesting matchup. As far as rating, yeah, I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. Again, it was a good match. Just didn't feel like it was quite stand and deliver worthy, I guess is all.
Yeah, I mean, you made a good point about the card being really stacked, and we'll obviously get into all of that in a couple of moments. So yeah, this being on the countdown show probably did make a lot of sense, and yeah, like I said, it did its job and was a nice little way to get things going. But how about we go into the start of the main show here, and we talk about everything that took place from the beginning of Stand and Deliver, technically speaking. And first of all, we would go into a match for the NXT North American Championship. We would see Ricky Saints defending his NXT North American title up against Ethan Page, and the history between these two has been quite apparent over the last, like, I want to say, well, roughly about a month or so, maybe a little bit longer, perhaps. And yeah, they've been getting up in each other's business, and that set up for quite a personal matchup here, and it was a very, very good one. I enjoyed it. It was a good one-on-one matchup with no sort of like extra shenanigans or anything going on. Just two guys for a title, just being able to sort of like showcase what they're really made of on the grand stage. And I think they did a really good job here. Ricky Saints, he's been impressive ever since he's come in. Recently, obviously picking up that championship. His first defense here, doing a good job against Ethan Page, who was also really, really impressed since he came in towards like the middle stages of last year to NXT. But yeah, these guys, although they're not really that new to the scene, Ethan Page with a bit more experience on NXT. Yeah, they were in their absolute element here. They made this title match, very, very important to begin with here, and I think the crowd were quite invested in it as well towards the later parts, especially. But yeah, definitely sort of like in and out type thing throughout the duration. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought both men put in a tremendous matchup. Ricky Saints probably the right winner, I would say, purely for the fact that he hasn't had the title for that long, and I think we both did go with Ricky Saints in our predictions. So I think no real shocks on this one. But yeah, just really want to just highlight how good these two men were, and the chemistry was off the charts between these two. They seemed to work with each other tremendously well, and it made for a really compelling title match. Ethan Page went close on a couple of occasions, didn't quite get over the line. Ricky Saints then hit the finish, and then would get the 1-2-3 to pick up the win and retain his title. So yeah, I've definitely enjoyed this one. Really good way to start off the actual show. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. And yeah, just really enjoyed a proper clinic between two men. Don't really have anything negative to say about it. It was a good match.
I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of chemistry, and I think we kind of thought that going into it. Given the predictability of this outcome, I think they kind of were behind the eight ball in terms of, most of us thinking that Saints would win. But yeah, the chemistry between these two guys is absolutely there, and this was pretty stiff too. I think that's probably a testament to their chemistry and their ability. Just they probably knew that because of the predictability of this match, they would need to do something a little different or a little more heavy hitting, and I feel like they kind of did that. Um, but yeah, I in terms of how much I enjoyed this match, it wasn't quite didn't quite live up to the expectations I had for it, especially considering it was the kickoff show. But I think we mentioned this in the predictions as well. I think this is just the start of this, and I think it's going to go on for probably at least one or two more matches. And so I think I personally felt like they maybe held back a little bit And don't get me wrong, the match was great, but I do feel like they were trying to kind of build that up. So that's kind of where my head was at. But again, gave it a 7.5, considering the outcome felt obvious. I think that's a pretty good match in itself and a great way to kick off Stand and Deliver.
It was a great way to kick things off, and I think get the ball rolling, see if that can sort of like go along into the matches still to come. And I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I think that absolutely happened. So our next contest was a tag team match, and that would be Fraxium defending the NXT Tag Team Championships up against Hank and Tank. We have spoke a lot on Hank and Tank's story over the past month or 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever, 2 months, however long it's been. It's been a while. They've been on a big old journey to find themselves and to get inspiration from other tags, and ultimately fail in every single attempt they've done with that, and then eventually would find that they just got to be the best versions of themselves thanks to the Street Profits. And since then, it's been up and up and up and up and up. They were going to a tag team championship match against Fraxium, who have been absolutely incredible for the last year. I think just over a year, really, if you look back even further. And when you have a match with Fraxium, you're almost guaranteed to have like one of the matches of the night, if not the match of the night. And I don't really think that this was an exception on that expectability. So when we had these two teams going into the ring, obviously we haven't seen this match before. This is a brand new one. So Fraxium obviously bring the speed, they bring the pace, they bring the complete unpredictability of what they're going to do within that ring. And then Hank and Tank, they also bring their own sense of unpredictability. They're very extreme. They just sort of like go balls to the wall, and they will do whatever they need to get the job done. And they're quite fun to watch as well. So both teams really, really fun, very energetic, and very high-paced throughout the matchup. That 100% showed in this contest. And in the end, we would see Fraxium lose their NXT Tag Team Championships to Hank and Tank in what was an absolutely tremendous contest. Really, really fun watch. And probably the match of the night, if not one of the matches of the weekend, to be honest with you, if I'm being perfectly candid here. It was an incredible contest. And we expect that from Fraxium's matches now. It always seems to happen. Every single time they're in the ring, they just produce pure gold. Whether they win, whether they lose, it doesn't really matter. They just bring the best out of their opponents. And I'm pretty sure this is the best that we've seen of Hank and Tank as well. You correct me if I'm wrong. That's maybe just my personal opinion. But I thought that these two teams absolutely went for it here, and they left everything in that ring. It was a brilliant match, beautiful tag team contest, with Hank and Tank getting the win. And I think based on their story that they had building up into this one, and I think you convinced me, Nick, to change my vote on this one. It's a good thing you did, because they were the winners in the end, and it did make sense. It was a nice little end to their story, their build over the last couple of months, whatever. And I think it worked out pretty well for them. So as to where Fraxium go from here, whether it's main roster bound for these two guys, I think they deserve that. I don't think anybody can question that. They've done everything in NXT really as a tag team. So if they're going up as a team, and I hope they do, because they're much needed on Raw, for example, then I think I would love to see them on the main roster very, very soon. But Fraxium just killing it again. Hank and Tank probably having their best match. It was an incredible contest. But what did you think, Nick? Did you share the same levels of enthusiasm to this one as me? Because I get this one on 9.5 out of 10. What about you, though?
As every Fraxium match delivers, and this was no exception. The journey that Hank and Tank went on is, I think, what really made it feel special. And as you said, a match of the weekend for sure. It's certainly a contender. Yeah, and this was pretty hard hitting too. Fast paced and hard hitting. It was quite the combo. And I think Hank and Tank just in general. And I feel like I went from not really caring much about these guys to quickly becoming my favorite, because they had that perfect blend of hard hitting and speed. And I think that's obviously a very unique combination. So I think it was great for Fraxium to put them over. It just made their comeback story that much better. Going from not being able to win a match to taking the NXT titles from Fraxium in a matter of 5 days. What a story that is in itself. But yeah, this was incredible. Nothing negative to say on this one at all. Good for them. They deserve it. I'm excited to see what they can do now that they are now going to be the chased. I'm curious to see how they'll play that angle. If they'll kind of tell the story they've just told us in a match, in terms of always looking like they're going to lose and somehow winning, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they'll play that one out, but I am interested to see how that goes. They obviously have some huge shoes to fill in that Fraxium and the ones they have left for them, uh, and holding the NXT titles for such a long time. And you said it. You said it perfectly yourself. There's absolutely no reason, and I would even argue maybe even more so than the Roxy case. There is no reason that Fraxium should not be on Raw within a month. Um, if for some reason they put them on SmackDown, that would be weird. But you need to be on main here very, very quickly. Are one of the best tag teams in the world. So, with that being said, I gave this one a 9 out of 10. Your 9.5 actually sounds a little better. Um, I just I don't know. It didn't quite get that final bump from me. But still, a 9 is obviously very good as well. So yeah, really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, absolutely nothing shabby about that. And 9 out of 10 is is very, very good. And I think that's sort of what we expect from these guys every time they're in the ring. And yeah, they didn't let up from this performance whatsoever. So it was great to see them again. Hopefully, we do see them on Raw, like you said, or main roster, whatever, within a month. I think that probably is a good expectation here. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, we do have the main roster bound very, very soon. Fraxium, yeah, they are one of the best tag teams going, and I think they'd be great up there. They're much needed for sure. How about we move on now to the Women's North American Championship ladder match? And this would be 6 women all looking to win the title. In Kalani Jordan's case for the second time, everybody else for the first time. So we would have solruca, we'd have Kalani Jordan, Zarya, Tia Hale, Lola Vice, and Izzy Dame, all qualified through individual singles matches on NXT in the last few weeks in order to get an opportunity here for this Women's North American Championship. The match was really fun. There was a whole lot going on here. I think when you have a ladder match, you're expected to put in so many different spots, etc., based on just bits of chaos throughout the entire matchup. Right? You want people going through ladders. You want people falling from high distances. You want to have iconic moments and memorable spots. I think this definitely had a few of those. It was very chaotic from start to finish. I think a lot of these women really sort of like showed up and showed out here. A few taking sort of like bigger spots than others for sure. There were some moments of perhaps confusion. There was a little bit of confusion between solruca and Zarya at the top of the ladder. That was a moment that I quite I was almost like stopped in my tracks. I was like, right, okay, what's going to happen here then? They just sort of like looked at one another. It was almost like quite a romantic moment, kind of speaking. I think I was laughing at the time of it, but that didn't take anything away from what a truly enjoyable match it was. And yeah, everybody seemed to have their in particular parts here. There was no one really that shied away or didn't really showcase what they could really do. In the end, we would have solruca climb the ladder and win the championship. After clearing the ring, soul snatcher after soul snatcher after soul snatcher. It's what she does best. Her finishing move is something that everybody really loves and enjoys, and there's a reason why she normally does utilize that quite effectively in matches like these. I think when you go back to last year, I think they had it at Battleground, was it? The women's ladder match for the title, the inaugural match for it. I think she did something similar there, where she hit a few soul snatches in a row, and yeah, that's similarly what she did here today as well. And then she would go on to win that championship as well, literally moments later. It was it was an incredible performance from all 6 women. But solruca, I think, she shines in moments like this. She's really, really good when it comes to situations such as a ladder match, and I think deservedly so to become the new NXT Women's Champion. So yeah, very, very happy with the performance here. Thought it was great from all 6 women. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. Just a really fun watch, and yeah, like I said, no one really sort of like ducked away, and that made it a much better experience for everybody involved, really. So yeah, don't really have an awful lot negative to say about this one. Maybe a few confusion moments here and there, but no, it was a really, really good matchup. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What about you, Nick, though? What did you think? Was it as as chaotic and enjoyable as I maybe have said already, or yeah, what were your overlasting thoughts here?
Yeah, I certainly call this entertaining. And I did actually pick up on that spot you mentioned as well with the almost seeming like a love interest angle from Zarya and Solruca at the top of the ladder. Um, I, I don't know if that was intentional, um, but it's certainly that's what I picked up as well. So clearly, you know, that's the impression that was, um, at least received by a couple of us. Um, yeah, but you called this one Solruca winning. I think that was she was certainly up there on the list of possibilities. I just wasn't sure due to the tag team of Zarya. Usually, you see them in a match. You would think maybe they'll have some miscommunication, and that'll lead to issues down the road. They had some issues, getting to this spot in general. With both of them being in it. So yeah, what a week for Seoul, winning the Speed Championship and the NXT Women's North American Championship within a few days of each other. So, yeah, no complaints from me. Just in terms of ladder matches, though, I feel like this one had some good spots, but didn't leave me like. I don't think I'm gonna years down the line. I don't think I'm gonna come back to this one. Thinking I need to watch it. I guess then as a complaint was just it didn't feel like it had a memorable moment outside of the Zarya and Soul, kind of going after at the same time. Aside from that, I felt like most of them were pretty par for the course spots. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they're going to go with the Zarya bit. If they're going to pretend to be all hunky dory going forward, or if they're going to immediately have some issues and maybe Zarya is the first challenger for Solruca. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they go from there. I personally think they probably could have waited to do something like that because now I feel like their hands are kind of forced. I guess they can pretend to go out business as usual for a while. Um, but yeah, I think she was probably the best call here. I think she has the most momentum out of anyone else in the match. Um, I think I still stand. I think Lola probably could have benefited the most from. But regardless, I like Soul quite a bit, and I'm excited to see where she can take this. Did I give this a rating? I don't think I did. I'll give this one an 8 out of 10. Yeah, like I said, a good match. Um, just didn't leave any marks for me personally that will have me looking back on it for years to come.
There we go. Didn't take too long. We're back on the same wavelength with when it comes to ratings. Yeah, we're usually around the right ballpark, aren't we? But yeah, I think this one, you covered it quite well there, basically saying how the spots weren't like completely memorable, but there were moments that I think maybe you could probably go on for a few weeks on NXT and then possibly fade off from after that. But yeah, Solruka, very happy for her. I think she absolutely deserves that title victory. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing how she gets on and seeing what her reign comes to be. So that relationship with Zarya, as you mentioned, could be quite interesting, but we'll see how that goes. Going into what would take place next, we would have a 3 versus 3 tag team match featuring Dark State and the D'Angelo family. So going into this one, there's been a number of question marks about Dark State and what exactly their intentions are. They just want to cause chaos, really. I think that's basically all they're really about here. They want to fight. They want to be thugs. They want to attack people, when they feel they need to, and yeah, they want to just cause a little bit of tension throughout the throughout the roster, and that would be pretty much evident going into the build to this matchup. And the D'Angelo family basically sticking up for themselves, basically saying like, look, you guys are here, you're new, but we're the guys around here. We're the family. We got the Don, and if you're basically just stepping on our territory, we're going to try and fight you off of it. And the match itself was quite fun. I think that before we talk into the big talking point, it was pretty much a standard 3 versus 3. There were some nice moments of cohesion between the team members, tandem moves. I think Dark State did pretty damn well, to be fair, for only their second match on NXT television. I think that, yeah, they definitely didn't look like they were brand new to the situation. Obviously, you got Dion Lennox, who has been around for a little bit longer than the rest of them. But I think, yeah, when you look at a grand stage such as Stand and Deliver, there's a lot of pressure to perform, and I don't think Dark State really sort of underperformed or anything here. They did exactly what they needed to do. They looked threatening and they looked aggressive, which is obviously what their characters are meant to be doing right here, right now. Going into the later stages of the matchup, we would have a whole lot of chaos and confusion between the D'Angelo family. So at first, there'd be a crowbar attempted to be introduced by Channing Stacks. The Don, Tony, he's been quite proud. He doesn't want to go to those measures. He used to, a long time ago. But recently, he's been more sort of like level-headed, and he wants to get things done properly. Channing, not too happy with that one, would basically just have to go along with it. He'd have to go with the orders of the Don. After all, a lot of the build here has been basically whether Channing really does trust Tony D'Angelo. And for the most part, he has said yes, he has. So, no questions there really. Then there'd be that confusion with the crowbar. That would all sort of be resolved straight afterwards. But then as things would go along, the crowbar would still be involved. And eventually it would get to a point where Channing Sax Lorenzo would turn on Tony D'Angelo and he would hit him where it hurts. And as soon as that would happen, I think this has been brewing for a little while. Just that level of trust, that level of maybe the underboss wanting to become, maybe more powerful, maybe wanting to be the boss himself. He's been making a lot of decisions recently, not been consulting Tony D'Angelo, and I think that's sort of been maybe the telling point here going into this matchup. He wants to have a bit more power, and I think that's ultimately what it came down to in this one. Because after the turn, he would basically head out of the ring, he would leave, and Tony D'Angelo sooner or later would be pinned, and Dark State would get the victory in this 3 vs 3 tag team match. It's quite the quite the turn. I think it's not the most surprising thing to happen, but still in the moment it was like, wow, this is actually taking place. Like, Channing Sax, what are you doing? Like that. I think that was basically what I was saying basically at the time. But yeah, it was it made sense. I think just looking into how Channing has acted over the last number of weeks, and he wants to do more. He wants to be more. So I can see exactly where this sort of like took him to. I was sort of like judging around the characters on the outside of the ring, looking at Adriana Rizzo. Didn't look like she was in on this one, and I think after the matchup had ended, Adriana and Tony, Luca Crucifino, they were both consulting Tony on the outside, and they were comforting him. So yeah, I have a feeling it was literally just Channing Sax Lorenzo here going into it for himself. And ultimately, at the end of the day, may have split himself from the entire family at this point. So, but yeah, decent enough match. Dark State did what they needed to do, and ultimately getting the victory, big stage. That's very, very good for them. And they're probably just going to use that to keep the ball moving, keep the ball rolling, and keep that momentum high. Post stand and deliver. So yeah, I think not a real surprise here with the result, but everything everything went the way it should have done. And yeah, that term, what did you make of it, Nick? How did you feel about Channing Sax sticking it to Tony D'Angelo? And what do you think of the match in general?
So yeah, as you kind of mentioned, obviously the outcome with Dark State winning, I think, was very much the correct decision. And I actually liked the match quite a bit, for just being what it was. I feel like Dark State were a lot better in the ring than I kind of thought they would be. For whatever reason, I just didn't have I hadn't seen enough to think that they could hold their own in the ring. But there are obviously members of the team that are better than others. But as a whole, I felt like they made a pretty good impression on me personally. So I now that they have our attention both in the ring and outside of the ring, I'm curious to see what comes next for them. But yeah, you mentioned it obviously, and obviously one of the biggest takeaways from the PLE as a whole. Um, yeah, the underboss turning on the Don, been teasing it for quite a while, and they finally pulled the trigger. Fortunately or unfortunately, I guess whichever side you're on, um, that that feels like that would probably be the kind of first, because after the match, Stax is attempting to drive away, and then I believe, if I remember correctly, he said something along the lines of, "Hold on, you'll hear back from me, and I'll explain." Kind of. So you mentioned everyone's kind of staying by the Don side. I have a feeling they're going to be kind of like a custody battle, if you will, in terms of where the family goes next. Obviously, this is not good for the family as a whole, but I kind of wonder if there's going to be a split in there somewhere. But regardless, they've been teasing this one for a while. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what the reason was and all of that next time tuning into NXT, I suppose. I just also wanted to note, I felt like the family was something that could have worked on the main roster. Um, I think that's been argued with me. I think maybe a little too cheesy sometimes, but I've always really liked the gimmick. And I felt like that was one that could have been. So who knows? Maybe we can find a way to fix this. Who knows? But we'll just have to wait and see. As for the match itself, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we got a rating from UKP, but feel free to throw that in after, or maybe I just missed it entirely. But I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. Like I said, a little better than I thought it was going to be, and obviously that turn at the end is going to make it memorable for a while to come.
No, you're absolutely right. I did forget to include my my rating at the end there, so I'll do it now as well. I matched you on this one. I did go a 7.5 out of 10, so we're very similar thinking on that one. And yeah, I think you made a good point. The gimmick probably would have worked really well on main roster, so it is a shame that maybe the dynamic has completely changed now. I don't know if they really can save this. I think Channing sort of like made the decision to go out on his own, so yeah, as to how this really works going forward, I have no idea. We'll have to watch NXT and see what happens. But yeah, Dark State, very interesting to them for them to see what their next step is. But yeah, excited, and yeah, a little bit of a shock and turn, but it was the right thing to be doing. So let's move on now to our penultimate contest of the night. That would be a fatal four-way, and we would see Stephanie Vaquer defending her NXT Women's Championship against Jada Parker, Julia, and Jordan Grace. So this match, when you put these four women in the middle of the ring, you expect a very good matchup, and I think they pretty much delivered on that front. The expectations were there, and I think they really did. They really hit the nail on the head. And yeah, it was a very, very, very good fatal four-way matchup. I think all four women really sort of like left it all out there. And yeah, they were all involved in like particular little spots and bits here and there, which made it a really compelling watch. I think with Stephanie Vaquer obviously coming in and getting the two championships at the same time, and then Julia obviously dropping one of those titles to Stephanie, and then pretty soon afterwards, coming back in, putting her name back in the hat for an opportunity at the championship. There was a little bit of confusion as to how this one was really going to go. Was it going to go back to Julia? Was Stephanie going to really win a title, win another title, relinquish the second title, and then drop the other title here? It's all a bit of a confusing situation. In my head, it made sense that Stephanie would keep it, and she'd move on from there. But yeah, that's exactly what happened in this contest. We had Stephanie Vaquer win the matchup, retain the NXT Women's Championship, and it was a really fun watch. I mean, you had Jada Parker probably put on one of her best performances. Julia was as consistent as ever. Jordan Grace really showed up and basically just showcase what she's completely capable of with her power game and everything else that she brings to the table. And Stephanie Vaquer, she's just one of the best for a reason. She's just unbelievably good, and consistently ever since she's come to NXT, absolutely fantastic. Probably from her perspective, 9 out of 10 performances each time. I think it's just a testament to how quickly she's rose up the NXT Women's division, almost seemingly bypassing a lot of women. And yeah, she just continues to keep on going up and up and up, which is fantastic for her. But yeah, it was a really good fatal four-way. Like I mentioned, I gave this one a 9 out of 10. I think it was the correct decision to have Stephanie win. And it's good to see Julia back. As to where she goes from here, we'll have to wait and see. Jada Parker and Jordan Grace, whether this is their time in the limelight for a little bit, I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out as well. But yeah, Stephanie winning. I don't know what it's going to take to get that title from her. Obviously, it's still quite new into her reign. So to say this kind of stuff is a bit weird, but I genuinely don't know if there's a woman on NXT who is capable of beating her or what the situation is going to be. You put a fatal four with this quality of performers in the ring together, and she still comes out on top and smelling the roses and, absolutely brilliant at the same time. Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting for sure. But yeah, what a match. Very, very enjoyable. Like I said, 9 out of 10. And yeah, just absolutely loved it. What about you, Nick? What did you think of this one? Is Stephanie Vaquer winning the right choice for you? And yeah, just what did you think of each particular individual involved here?
I think this kind of falls into the same category as the Ricky Saints and Ethan Page match, in that the outcome, at least to me, and I believe you thought Vaquer was winning as well. It, it feels like it takes away just a little bit sometimes, and I felt like this was one of those scenarios. Maybe my expectations just being a little too high. That's absolutely possible. But yeah, you mentioned a good point. Vaquer, what will it take? Because they've kind of booked themselves in between a rock and a hard place here with all the talent they have. Um, you know, Having someone like Vaquer hold the title for 6+ months, that's going to put some other women in some bad spots. So there's certainly no shortage of challengers, but eventually, you can't have everyone going for the title every day. So I felt like they didn't do as much leading up to this. They kind of did the Parker Grace rivalry, and they were kind of having weren't a fan of each other, and I felt like they didn't really capitalize that on as much as they could have, because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like um, had they you know cared more about each other than anyone else, and maybe seemed like the title wasn't as important as getting revenge on each other, I felt like they could have easily taken that rivalry and kind of taking out aside of the title match, because I feel like the obvious answer here is Julia going up against Vaquer for the next however long, because obviously that's the money match that everyone wants to see. Um, and obviously Grace is no slouch herself, and Parker obviously being the least known, least experienced one out of the bunch. But I feel like a contest with her and Grace would help her tremendously. So I kind of felt like they would do more with that, and it didn't feel like they did at least enough. Um, to me personally, but everyone got their spots in, and I just felt like it was more so about Julia and Vaquer here than anyone else, whether that's on purpose or just how it worked out. Um, but yeah, I think Vaquer winning is the right choice. Unfortunately or fortunately, I think she's going to have it for a while. So yeah, it was a good match, and I gave this one an 8 out of 10. Um, Kind of similar to the women's ladder match. It just didn't leave me with anything that was had me coming back for it for years to come or something. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where Victor can take it from here. Um, yeah, they say NXT and WWE certainly have their hands full with how they're going to book this. Luckily, she at least got rid of the North American title. Um, Voluntarily, of course. So yeah, they have their hands full with this one and how they're going to book this one going forward.
They really do. Yeah, I don't really remember anybody really that's been booked this strongly so quickly in their time on NXT. Even in WWE in general, really, there aren't really that many people who sort of like fit that demeanor. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see where she goes from here as to how she's going to sort of like go about her title reign, how long it's going to be, who's going to eventually beat her, how she does eventually lose it. Yeah, it's going to be quite fascinating, but definitely interested for sure about how that one's going to take place. But before we, that's a conversation for another day. How about we leave that there? Let's go into our main event now and talk about the last particular match of Stand and Deliver. This will be for the NXT Championship between Obafemi, the reigning champion, Javon Evans, and Trick Williams. And I think, there was a lot going into this one. A lack of maybe respect and authority towards Javon Evans, from both Trick Williams and Obafemi. Maybe both men looking down on him. Being only 20 years old, I think it's a certain case of maybe, just not thinking he's really that big a threat. He's not experienced enough. He doesn't really have the standing to sort of like showcase, well, to tell his opinions or whatever, and for them to actually respect that and to go off of it. And I think that was very apparent in the build up for this one. But Obafemi and Trick, they've wanted to settle things between themselves for quite a while, and Javon's sort of maybe been like a tertiary member of this feud. It goes back to like the dark state attacks and stuff. Javon trying to tell these guys that they're going to attack and they're a threat, they're dangerous. Oba and Trick not really worrying about that and sort of like worried more about themselves at that point. Could have listened to Trick and obviously ended up getting attacked. Ended up losing a match to Dark State in the build up. And obviously going into this one, it was definitely a lack of respect from the two more experienced men in the ring. And yeah, talk about the triple threat itself. It was pretty fun. I think Javon Evans really sort of like came out the gates hot. He was very, very quick with his pace, and that's what he brings to the table anyway. He's the young OG for a reason. He's very, very quick around the ring, very athletic. And there were some moments in the match where he went very, very close. There were some parts where I thought, you know what, maybe Javon's going to actually get the win here. It was almost like seemingly setting up for that. But I think each time that it did, there'd be a really big kick out, or there'd be maybe something that happened that maybe would go against him and his ways in this matchup. And eventually it would come down to Obafemi standing tall at the end of the matchup, winning the triple threat and retaining his NXT championship. And this was a really good end of the show. I thought, for a very consistent show up until this point, This didn't really take a step down from any of that. So, yeah, top quality performances from all three men here. So many near falls and close calls. I lost count really of how many there were in this matchup. It was a very energetic and fast paced triple threat, and that's what you really want in this one. You had stuff going on the outside of the ring with announce tables and all carnage across ringside, going back into the ring with those near falls and whatnot. And yeah, I thought that especially Javon and Oba, I think they really sort of like shone in this particular matchup. I'm not taking anything away from Trick Williams, but I just thought that it wasn't really his best performance, I don't think. But when you've got Oba and Javon in the ring, I think it's very hard to live up to the to the standards that they sort of set. Javon will obviously has very high pace energy throughout the entirety of the contest, and his sort of like I don't know underdog sort of mentality here going into this one. Obafemi being the champion, obviously all eyes are on him. He's the expected favorite. He's dominant, and he's got such power to his game, such strength, such dominance that it's hard to really not notice that. I think Trick maybe went a little bit under the radar in this one. He had moments of brilliance, and I won't take that away from him. He looked good when he needed to, but I just think that a lot of the light was shone on Oba and Javon instead. But yeah, really good matchup. I think it was the right call ultimately to have Obafemi win. I think after having such a long NXT North American Championship reign, I think he at least has to have a pretty decent length NXT title reign just to sort of like try and match that mentality at the top of the card. Obviously, compare that to the North American Championship, which is the middle of the card. I think Oba deserves sort of like a big reign at the top of the card as well. So yeah, right call, great match, really enjoyed it. I've already mentioned the dynamic between the three men. So yeah, I gave this one a 9 out of 10. Very similar quality to that of the women's Fatal 4-Way, in my opinion, at least anyway. And yeah, just a really compelling main event that had me on the edge of my seat for the most part of it. But what about you, Nick? What did you think? Was Oba winning the right call in your book? And how did you find everybody's involvement here? Throughout the entire stretch of this triple threat.
I will agree with you in that I feel like Trick was I guess the least impressive of the three. Obviously, that's stiff competition with Javon, who can do things that most people can't, and then Oba just having to be that strong, dominant champion. So Trick kind of he's kind of a weird blend of the two of them when you think about it. And for whatever reason, maybe it was intended or maybe it wasn't. Yeah, he didn't feel like he was a factor that he could or should have been. I agree. I agree with you there. Um, that being said, uh, I feel like in terms of triple threat matches, it felt like everyone kind of was in the right spot at the right time. I didn't personally, at least I don't recall anything that felt clunky. Um, it flowed very well, and I felt like, as you kind of mentioned, there were several moments where I thought we were maybe getting a new champion, specifically Javon. I It had me convinced that they were going to pull the trigger on it, but they didn't. You can say that having me believing that clearly means that it was a sign of a good match and a good story being told. So I had questioned this being the main event, and I had worried that it maybe wouldn't live up to the hype. But short of the Hank and Tank match, I felt like this was the best match of the night, and close to. And I felt like it was deserving, and it did. It felt like a main event match once we got there, and having watched it all the way through, it felt like okay, I understand that was worthy of a main event for the show. Yeah, we kind of mentioned that in the predictions too. Obafemi, similar situation to the care. I don't know who's going to take this title from him. And I kind of thought in the predictions video, I thought I wouldn't be mad at Trick or Javon winning, preferably Trick. I think it's still a little too early for Javon, but I feel like Oba is kind of to a spot where he's done everything he can on main. So NXT, I think you thought he could use a little more time. So NXT clearly agrees with you. So let's see where Oba takes this, and let's see, I guess, who can stand up to him next. No one comes to mind that he hasn't already faced. Not to rule out anyone that he has faced. Couldn't be a possibility. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. In terms of the match, yeah, I gave it 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, worthy of the main event. I feel like, and yeah, one of the best matches of the night. Um, in terms of overall and kind of final thoughts for Stand and Deliver, yeah, I felt like a rare. I don't say this a lot about NXT Takeover. It was good. It just didn't feel like it surpassed the good mark to me personally. Didn't feel like it was a great NXT PLE. And granted, they set some pretty high bars, but with it being Mania weekend, this one personally just didn't feel like it quite lived up to that that expectation that I often set for these events. Um, yeah, not a bad one by any means. Just not again. I feel like I said that a few times during the event, but just didn't feel like it is one I'm going to go back and watch when there are so many other options. So what I don't quite know what it was. Maybe just the predictability of the outcomes. I think that certainly played a part. Uh, but yeah, so overall, I'll give this one an 8 out of 10. Again, a lot of the main roster PLEs don't quite live up to that level in itself. So certainly not a knock. Just didn't feel like it left me with anything in the grand scheme of things that will have me coming back.
Normally we're pretty much on the same wavelength for the entirety of these podcasts and videos, but I think this one maybe there's a very big difference here because although the ratings aren't too dissimilar, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I thought that this was an extremely consistent and very good show from top to bottom. Really, I thought the card was very stacked, and I don't think really anybody sort of like underperformed or anything particular. Obviously, there are some matches that were not quite as good as some others, and I think you get that on every show. So that's completely fair. But I remember watching this one and thinking, this is banger after banger after banger, hit after hit after hit. Nothing really missed. And although I would probably agree with you in the fact that it wasn't perhaps like one of your all timers. It didn't have like a standout moment, which is like, oh my god, we're gonna watch that back in like 10 years time and remember this and think, yes, this is where this happened. I will definitely agree with there wasn't particularly one of those moments, and obviously being on WrestleMania weekend, I think you do have to sort of think, these are the biggest times of the year. Get the bigger stars out, you stack the deck, and you play your best hand. And I think when you're in Vegas, that's what you do best. Really, you play those hands and you sort of like see how it all works together. And I thought that consistency was key across the entire card, and I really liked that. But yeah, maybe those standout moments probably weren't there. But 8.5, I think, is very good. I don't think you're going to get a more consistent show this weekend in terms of just the match quality and everything that took place. But I think maybe missing those particular standout moments that might have been the key detail here. But yeah, nonetheless, terrific show, really really good from start to finish. And I think it was a deservingly a stand and deliver event. But maybe the first time we've actually shared a big difference in thoughts there on an event such as this. But hey guys, regarding stand and deliver, that's basically everything that we have to say regarding the event and everything that took place here, in Vegas for part one of this wrestling weekend, including WrestleMania and all that lot, which will be coming out very, very soon. We'll be doing podcasts and videos that covers everything on both nights of WrestleMania, including Raw After Mania and everything like that that's going to be going on, going forward in the near future. So thank you everybody for tuning on in to The Push with Nick and KP. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this one, whether we hit the mark, whether you disagree with whatever we said. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you like what the content that we're putting out here, please hit like on the video and subscribe to our channel, where we'll be releasing even more content in the future. Like I mentioned, all the WrestleMania weekend stuff, as well as weekly reactions and all that kind of stuff going forward in the future as well. So thank you everybody for tuning on in to The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you all in the next one. Thank you very much, guys, and goodbye.